Imagine decorating your home for Christmas, filling your street with joy, only to receive a shocking letter demanding you tear it all down or pay hundreds of dollars every single day. This isn't just about lights. It's about power, control, and one woman's obsession to silence holiday cheer. What started as a neighborhood dispute turned into the most viral HOA battle of the year. This is the shocking story of Karen versus the Christmas lights. It was the beginning of December, and the Peterson family decided to go all out with their Christmas decorations that year. After a long and difficult 12 months, they felt the neighborhood needed some joy, and they wanted their house to be a beacon of festive cheer. Strings of golden lights hung from the roof, glowing reindeer stood on the front lawn, and a massive Christmas tree twinkled in the window. Passers-by slowed their cars just to admire it. Children laughed and pointed, and neighbors stopped to take photos, but not everyone was impressed. Living directly across the street was a woman who believed herself the guardian of order in the neighborhood. Known by many simply as Karen, she had complained in the past about dogs barking, lawns growing too long, and even the color of mailboxes. For her, the Petersons' dazzling decorations weren't joyful, they were an eyesore. She claimed the blinking lights hurt her vision at night and declared the display a violation of HOA standards. At first, the Petersons ignored her glare from across the street, thinking it would pass. But Karen had no intention of letting it go. The very next day, a formal complaint was filed with the Homeowners Association. She demanded immediate removal of the decorations, citing property value disruption and light pollution. The HOA, known for its strictness, didn't hesitate to issue a notice. The letter arrived on the Petersons' doorstep like a storm cloud. They were given 72 hours to dismantle their entire setup, or face a fine of $500 for each day of non-compliance. The family stood in shock, realizing their holiday cheer had suddenly turned into a high-stakes battle. As the deadline ticked down, neighbors whispered about the situation. Some sided with the Petersons, seeing their lights as harmless joy. Others worried about what the HOA might do if rules were ignored. But the Petersons had already made their choice. They wouldn't back down. The lights would stay on, no matter the cost. And so, the first night after the notice expired, the Peterson home shone brighter than ever. Every bulb burned with defiance, every twinkle an act of rebellion. Across the street, Karen watched from her window, her face lit by the very lights she despised. She was furious, and she wasn't done yet. The stage was set for a neighborhood showdown, one that would soon spiral far beyond anyone's imagination. Karen wasted no time. The morning after the Petersons refused to take down their decorations, she stormed into the HOA office with photographs and printed complaints. The board, eager to enforce their authority, escalated the penalties. Instead of warnings, the Petersons now faced a formal fine of $500 a day, effective immediately. The HOA claimed the lights were excessive and violated clauses about community harmony and uniform appearance. It didn't matter that many other homes had Christmas decorations. None were as grand as the Petersons. The family had, in the HOA's view, crossed an invisible line. Word spread quickly. Neighbors argued on community forums, some calling the HOA bullies, others warning the Petersons to comply before things worsened. The Petersons remained firm. They had worked tirelessly all year, saving money to create something special for their children and for everyone who passed by. To tear it down would be giving in to unfairness. Karen, however, relished every update. She bragged to friends that she was bringing order back to the neighborhood. Her satisfaction grew as HOA letters piled on the Petersons' doorstep. Yet beneath her smugness, there was a simmering resentment. Why did people still gather at the Peterson house to take photos? Why were children laughing outside her window while she sat in silence? The HOA, pressured by Karen's persistence, went further. They scheduled an emergency board meeting to discuss legal measures, including liens on the Petersons' property if fines were unpaid. This wasn't just about lights anymore, it was about power. The Petersons knew they were in deep trouble, but they also knew they weren't alone. Support from neighbors grew, with many dropping off cookies, cards, and even small donations to help with the fines. The Petersons' house became more than a display. It became a symbol of resistance against overreach. Karen watched in horror as her plan backfired. Instead of isolating the Petersons, she had accidentally united the neighborhood. Still, she was determined. She began recording every car that slowed down to look at the lights, every sound she could label noise disturbance, and every small detail she could use to fuel her campaign. The conflict was no longer just a neighborhood issue. It was evolving into something bigger, something that would soon capture the attention of outsiders. The Petersons didn't realize it yet, but their Christmas lights were about to make national headlines. By mid-December, the Petersons' story was everywhere. A local journalist covering holiday events stumbled upon the dispute and published an article titled, "Family Faces Massive HOA Fines Over Christmas Lights." Within hours, it was shared across social media. Thousands of people commented, outraged at the HOA's actions. TV crews showed up on the street. News vans parked alongside neighbors who brought lawn chairs to watch the spectacle. The Petersons' house, once a quiet home, had transformed into a landmark. Cars lined the block, headlights mixing with the glow of Christmas bulbs. Strangers drove from towns away just to see the infamous lights. The HOA panicked. Their carefully maintained image of control was crumbling. They issued stern statements about rules and regulations, but their words only fueled the fire. Online users mocked them as Scrooges and holiday Grinches. Memes spread, portraying Karen as the villain of Christmas. Karen herself was livid. She couldn't walk down the street without whispers following her. People pointed at her house, labeling it the Grinch's cave. What enraged her most was the constant noise, the cheer, the carolers, the never-ending laughter from visitors who seemed determined to celebrate louder each night. Meanwhile, donations poured into the Petersons' online fund. Supporters across the country sent money to help cover the daily fines. Some even offered free legal assistance. What began as a small neighborhood quarrel had transformed into a cultural battle, one that questioned the limits of HOA authority. The Petersons, though overwhelmed, felt a growing sense of responsibility. Their fight was no longer just for their lights. It was for every homeowner who had ever been silenced by unnecessary rules. The pressure weighed heavily, but their resolve burned as brightly as the glowing reindeer on their lawn. The HOA doubled down, threatening lawsuits and property liens. But the louder they shouted, the more the world sided with the Petersons. The battle lines were clear, joy and freedom on one side, rigid control on the other, and as Christmas drew nearer, the tension only intensified. Something was going to break. One cold evening, with the lights blazing and a crowd gathered, the conflict reached its peak. Karen had finally convinced the HOA to involve law enforcement, claiming the Petersons were violating multiple ordinances. Police cars rolled up, their flashing lights mingling with the Christmas glow. The crowd fell silent as officers approached. Karen stood triumphantly on the sidewalk, arms crossed, certain this would be the night her victory was secured. She pointed toward the Petersons' house, demanding the lights be shut off. But the officers were cautious. They saw no immediate danger, only families singing carols and children drinking hot cocoa. They spoke with the Petersons, reviewed the notices, and then turned back toward the HOA board members. "This is a civil matter," they explained. "We can't shut down Christmas." The crowd erupted in cheers. Karen's face flushed red with rage. For her, this was humiliation of the highest order. The police had come, but instead of enforcing her will, they had dismissed it. That night, the Petersons' house shone brighter than ever, with neighbors adding their own decorations in solidarity. Entire blocks joined in, stringing lights across fences and rooftops. What had begun as one family's display was now a community-wide rebellion. Karen retreated indoors, seething, but she wasn't finished yet. If the police wouldn't enforce the rules, she would push the HOA into a full-blown legal war. The HOA filed suit against the Petersons just days before Christmas, demanding payment of all fines and removal of the decorations. The case quickly became a media circus. Reporters filled the courtroom, eager to capture every detail of the holiday battle. The Petersons' lawyers argued that the HOA had overstepped, enforcing vague rules selectively and targeting the family without justification. They presented photos of other decorated homes and testimony from neighbors who insisted the lights brought happiness, not harm. Karen sat in the courtroom, her face hard with determination. She testified that the lights kept her awake at night, disrupted her peace, and degraded the neighborhood. But under cross-examination, her statements crumbled. Evidence showed her blinds were closed at night, and witnesses admitted she had a long history of complaints against nearly everyone around her. The judge listened carefully, weighing both sides. The Petersons' case was strengthened by the overwhelming public support, including petitions with thousands of signatures. By the end of the trial, it was clear this was more than a simple dispute. It was a fight over the spirit of community. The verdict would be announced on Christmas Eve. The timing felt symbolic, almost poetic. On the morning of December 24th, the courtroom was packed. The judge delivered the decision. The HOA had overreached. The fines were dismissed, the liens dropped, and the Petersons were free to keep their decorations. The judge declared that community rules should not be used to suppress joy, especially during the holidays. The crowd erupted in applause. News outlets broadcast the story nationwide, hailing it as a victory of spirit over control. The Petersons, relieved and emotional, returned home to find even more neighbors had joined in the celebration. The entire street glowed with lights, brighter than ever before. Karen, however, faced the weight of her actions. She had become infamous, not just in her neighborhood, but across the internet. Memes mocked her as the Christmas Grinch of HOAs. She retreated into silence, her crusade over. That night, the Petersons stood on their porch looking out over a sea of twinkling lights. Their fight had started with one family's desire for joy, but ended with a community united in defiance against unnecessary control. Christmas that year was not just about decorations. It was about freedom, resilience, and the power of standing together. And as snow began to fall, it seemed the neighborhood had finally found its true holiday spirit.